Hello, Peter4789 Cyrus here, and welcome to another rendition of Sirus Gaming Corner, a gaming podcast where I, Starfish3090, and Force Reviews talk about various gaming topics, from old games to new games. Everything is fair game as far as discussion goes. So, how are you guys this evening thus far?
I'm doing very well. Always glad to be back.
I am doing great on vacation this week.
So, for this week, we didn't actually got something planned prior. I think we just decided to talk about Tri-Ace. So, Tri-Ace. What can you say about Tri-Ace besides it probably being dead right now? Since I don't think it released a game, or an original game, not like a remaster, till like 2018 or 2017, around there.
Something like that, and they've been totally silent ever since.
Yeah.
With the exception of the fact they released First Departure R for PS4 and the second one in Japan.
Yeah.
Nothing since that game.
I guess we should talk about Tri-Ace's flag title, which is probably Star Ocean. And funny story that Tri-Ace is closely linked to Namco Bandai. In that, I don't remember the entire story, but I think the people who work on the first Tales of Fantasia were not really happy with Namco and how they changed Fantasia. And then, being dissatisfied, they just formed their own company, which was... What was the original name again? Team Wolf something.
Yeah, I don't remember. It was something like that.
Yeah. But then, eventually that company turned to Tri-Ace, and then they made a bunch of really cool games, I think. Well, a bunch of pretty good games, I think.
Yeah, lots of solid games, but nothing terribly exceptional for the most part.
To me, my favorite two games that come from Tri-Ace is probably Radiata Stories and Valkyrie Profile 2 Samaria.
Same for me. Those are the same two for me too.
Mine is the same for them, with the exception of two other ones. Star Ocean 1 remake for PSP and Star Ocean 2 for PSP as well. And then, of course, Radiata Stories in the second Valkyrie Profile game. The first game is
the first Valkyrie Profile game?
It had some things in it that probably would make it more old school to people who get into the Valkyrie games, because the second one was way more refined and a lot more fun to play.
I think it's more traditional too.
I'd probably say that the first Valkyrie Profile game is a lot more open-ended than the second one, because if I remember right, how you get your inheritors and how the game progress wasn't in a linear fashion. It's kind of like the Atelier series, actually. There being time limit of sorts until Ragnarok comes. Then you have to gather strong inheritors, and then there was a secret ending requirement too, which you have to do. If I remember right. The structure.
Yeah, I never played it, the first one, but I do know the structure, and the second one plays a lot more like a traditional RPG.
Yeah, the second one is much more traditional.
Mm-hmm.
In the first one, I got into Ragnarok, but I couldn't beat it because I didn't train my inheritor well enough. So I couldn't beat the boss, so I would have to start over.
Yeah, as opposed to the second one, since it's more traditional, you just go back and grind until your heart's content.
Mm-hmm. As for Star Ocean, I've only played beaten 4. I played a bit of 3, and then quit after the tutorial because I didn't like how it controlled. It's it just controls so odd, especially with how you attack with the control stick, kind of, I think, or you do something with the control stick, which was
no,
really...
dodging is the
control stick, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just felt so off, so wrong to me, especially coming from Tales, and and Star Ocean 4, which Star Ocean 4 felt very reminiscent of Tales, even though it does have its own control quirks. But it felt familiar enough that I could just jump into Star Ocean 4. Star Ocean 3 was just totally alien to me. Not just to Tales, general action games in general.
I just hated the way the main character controlled in the third game. He kept sliding around everywhere and get on ice, slip and slide into a wall and take damage. I was like, And then of course that dungeon area where you had to ride on that monster and try to figure out how to get out by blowing through walls, and only
Oh, that was
certain
a
ones you can
nightmare.
control, and one just was erratic. That annoyed me so much I wanted to quit playing it. But
I had to use a guide. I didn't even bother trying to figure it out.
I had no guide, so I was playing it completely blind. But I tell you what, the third game was so good at that I think the fourth and fifth was lacking was the amount of actual side content and the overabundance of just quality of life improvements from the Japanese release. They added so much in the American version. Like, there's a fighting mode if you unlock that, where you literally play like a fighting game with all of the Star Ocean characters in the third game. That was so weird. I mean, like, there was actually some cool things if you and it had its own trophy system actually. You could actually get trophies when you set up a memory card. You could
Oh yeah, the in-game battle
did certain
trophy.
achievements.
Mhm.
You know, you could literally
Which was
max out
cool.
trophies. That
I don't know
was
if that
like
was
the
a
first
thing
game
back in
that
the
had
day.
trophy support technically on the
Mhm.
PS2. So like that game gave you a reason to want to go back and play it. It had so much content in it. And I think that was probably one of the better Star Ocean games that Tri-Ace made. But after that, it just went downhill. The content wasn't there like it was in the third game. And when you get to the fifth game, the quality wasn't there. Oh, brother.
Like, I don't know. To me, playing Star Ocean, like at least the 3D ones. I haven't played the 2D ones. Star Ocean 4, because that's literally the only game I played, felt like a much more restricted version of Tales. I think. I would say in terms of like controls, in terms of freedom of your combos. Especially like to me, playing Star Ocean 4 felt like playing Tales on semi-manual mode. And you don't play Tales in semi-manual mode. You play it in manual mode, damn it.
Hey man, I do.
Oh my god.
You know, I've played so many Tales games. I have no idea if I've played it in manual mode or not, to be honest with you. Whatever default setting it's on, I think that's how I've played a lot of those games.
I want to use Demon Fang at any distance I want. Like Tales just have a lot more control to me, and that makes it more fun to play in
Plus,
comparison.
just the combat in
to
general in
Star Ocean.
Tales is a lot more
Yeah,
in depth, and there's a lot more
Mhm.
versatility to the characters.
yeah. That's my thought. Just comparing Star Ocean 4 to the other Tales games I played.
Well, let's not forget that they did have a couple of other ones to come out. Exist Archive was a unique idea, taking
Barely played it.
some of the executions of Valkyrie Profile and try to create a new type of game. Basically, this game involves characters dying and going into this other world to try to save their life. They have to fend themselves through this kind of weird place where they're not quite dead, but they're not quite alive to go back to Earth,
They're like in purgatory, kind of.
basically, but kind of in the sky. And so they see Earth below them, but they can't get to it. They have to kind of find their way back to it. And the game is fully voiced in English. But the game looked almost like a phone game. It almost like they started developing it for the phone first, and then it
Had a
looked
really
as if
weird
it got,
graphical style.
huh?
Had like a really weird graphical style.
It did. It almost like they had a budget of a phone game at first, but I think eventually they just ported it. But the game is actually quite good. If you like the way Valkyrie Profile 2 played, then you definitely should play Exist Archive because it has the same gameplay style.
Yeah, very similar battle system.
Very similar, and actually it's not a bad thing either because the second game was really good. Because people wanted a Valkyrie Profile game, but Exist Archive was about as close as we're going to get to one. So I think that game is, and part of me thinks the reason why a lot of people hadn't played it, because Star Ocean 5, I think when people realize it's Tri-Ace and they think of 5 and they think, I don't know if I
Probably
want
got
to like this
permanent
game or
scar
not.
on their reputation, honestly.
It puts you off to want to play it, and it's really not a bad game actually. I think it's one that just kind of took a lot of bad rep because of the company. And I think the problem lies with the fact a lot of its 3D games that Trius has made, with the exception of the second Valkyrie Profile, I'm going to stress that enough.
Like
The second
yeah.
one was really good.
Yeah, I guess you could
A lot
say
of the 3D
Valkyrie.
games have suffered
Yeah. I guess,
quality.
yeah, I guess you could say that Valkyrie Profile 2 is a 3D game. It's like
Yeah, like
it's sort of it's rendered in 3D. The way how you traverse the map is in 2D.
It is
though.
technically
in
a
battle-
3D
in battle,
game.
And
too,
battle
you run
is
in
the
3
3D.
dimensions.
Yeah.
In the battles, it is 3D, but like when you're walking around, it's 2.5D.
It's 2D.
That's
yeah.
the same thing with. Wait, who made? What was the other game? Was it Time and Eternity? Not Time and Eternity. What is that game called? It's called In Eternity or something, but it's named
Are
differently.
you talking
over
about
here.
Resonance of Fate?
yeah,
Is that made by Triumph?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's made by Triumph.
Yeah, I don't like that game very much.
Oh,
I
but
think it's okay.
Now, to be fair, I don't think the game is inherently bad, but
It's an
I think
acquired thing, that's
personally,
for sure.
it does have a lot of gameplay elements that if you really don't pay attention, you're not going to understand it. The issue that I have with
I haven't played Resonance of Fate. I think its problem is that it like front loads you with its mechanics very hard. But then
Well, there's a lot to the battle system,
yeah,
and
but
they
then,
give it
but,
all to you all at once.
but then I heard the problem is that
Well, the thing is, it
difficulty-
never evolves.
Yeah, it
past
never
that.
evolves. Yeah, like the difficulty remains
Literally,
the same.
you're going to be doing the same things in
Yeah.
combat at the end of the game as you did at the start of the game.
Uh,
And another thing that's funny too is that I've never seen people mention this, but once you get everything down pat, it's actually nowhere near as convoluted as it appears. It's actually it's actually pretty simple because it basically boils down to do a hero action, do scratch damage, then follow it up with a hero action and do permanent damage, and then just rinse and repeat. Like there's a lot of like fancy glitter and stuff on it, and it looks really intimidating, but once you play a couple chapters and you fight a few dozen battles, you're like, wait, this is it? There's actually really nowhere near as much to it as it initially appears.
I'll probably say like Resonance of Fate has a very off the wall story from what I've seen.
It's very definitely more gameplay focused.
Yeah.
But I think what's disappointing about Resonance of Fate's story is that it has a great premise and really cool concept, but it just does nothing with it, and the story goes nowhere. And the pacing is like just really bad because it's completely like episodic, and even when interesting things start happening, they don't start happening until towards the end of the game, and even these interesting moments are like completely self-contained within the chapters, and it doesn't really have like a big grand overarching story. It's just like a bunch of misadventures with the trio. So it just feels like really like you have such a cool backstory and so many great ideas, but they just didn't do anything with it. It was like purely focused on the battle system.
So I want to make it very clear for anybody curious about when I mentioned earlier about the 3D games. This ties into what Swart's talking about with Resonance of Fate, is that this game had a 2.5D style with a 3D battle system. Valkyrie Profile 2 had the same similar thing where it was 2.5D with a 3D battle system, as well as Exist Archive, which had a 2.5, I should say 2.5D, sorry, with a 3D sort of battle system. The thing was, Trice, I think at this point in time, I honestly feel like they didn't know where to distance themselves from when they worked with their first.
I probably say that Trice probably peaked in the PS2 era.
Their prime wasn't the PS2 era, for sure.
Yeah.
With Radiata Stories and
like Radiata Stories, Valkyrie Profile 2, Star Ocean 3. As much as I like that game put me off, people really like Star Ocean 3, except for maybe
I like
the
Star
ending.
Ocean 3 a lot.
It
A
comes
lot
down
of
to
it has to do with nostalgia, but I still do like it,
well,
and I do think
Star
it's one
Ocean
of
3 is
their
not
better
perfect, but if you look
No.
at all the content that game had, it was definitely, you would never tire yourself with the amount of stuff you could do in the third game. But for some reason, when it went to PS3 generation, it started to suffer.
Hey, you know
No,
the game.
I did
You know the game that signaled the decline of Trice,
What?
Infinite Undiscovery.
Oh yeah, that was
Wait, you talking about Infinite Discovery?
They
see
made
like
for Infinite Undiscovery.
You know, now my issue with that game well, before I say what the issue that I had with it, it was a good attempt to make themselves have an identity, to create something original and different.
But ironically,
I gotta give them
Infinite
credit for
Undiscovery
at least-
has an identity crisis.
No, it doesn't have identity crisis in that sense. No, because it tried to be compelling with vast amounts of characters you could choose from. It had these crazy locations. You were always going from place to place, and it was just there was so much to see and do in a short amount of time. The problem with that game was the exact thing I just mentioned. Too many characters, too much diversity in areas, and not enough time to really sit there and learn the characters and know who they are, and just kind of breathe in the world. Because
I can't say I really agree with that, because Valkyrie Profile 2 and Radiata Stories have a ton of characters in there too.
The difference between those games and this one is that they take their time, allow you to soak in the characters.
No, I mean, most of the characters you get is like through recruiting them. In Radiata Stories, you do their side quests, and then,
but I think that those characters had a lot more personality to them.
And then Valkyrie Profile 2, you basically pick them up. You basically pick up the inheritors from weapons and stuff.
Oh, here's a old sword or something on laying.
I do think that both games do like give a lot of life to the characters still, especially in Valkyrie Profile 2 when you get two inheritors that know each other and they do converse with each other during battle, which is I think is really cool.
Which is neat.
And they do have their own backstory in those two games too, with Radiata Stories being in the side quests and in the bios you get, and in Valkyrie Profile 2 they give you like background info on them.
Problem with Undiscovery, they don't do that such thing.
Yeah,
because the game is constantly moving the story along.
The problem with Infinite Undiscovery is that they tried to have a traditional cast of characters, but then they didn't do anything with it. Why in Valkyrie Profile 2 and Radiata Stories, they're side content, so they have more time to develop them because they are side content. Why in Infinite Undiscovery, they're part of the main story, and then they try to not concentrate mostly on the abundance of characters just because it would slow down the main story. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Is that I get what you're saying. You're saying that these games did it differently, but that's the issue. They didn't balance out the story with learning the characters. Some games take the opportunity to find a special place in the game that would allow you to learn or to have a conversation with the characters.
Yeah,
I mean, take Persona 5 for instance. You have this opportunity after school, and even when you're in the dungeons fighting, there is this connection with the characters or the bonding process that you have, where Infinite Undiscovery failed to do so. And because of that, I think it allowed people to not really feel connected, as opposed to Valkyrie Profile 2 and Radiata Stories did. So while the game is not bad, again, you could say, well, I had some fun with Infinite Undiscovery, because it's not a horrible game. I'm not trying to say the game is terrible, but it definitely is not something that I would say wholeheartedly. Is it like the first game comes to mind from Tri-Ace when I think, what was their good Tri-Ace games? Infinite Undiscovery is not on that list when I think of good Tri-Ace games. It's just not.
I think it was a good attempt.
It's a good attempt. You can definitely tell they wanted to have a good identity with a game that's original, and it will pull people into their kind of reestablish themselves as like the modern AAA JRPG company. It didn't do that, sadly.
Okay. Oh yeah, I agree about that. I was just saying that I don't think like an abundance of characters is a problem in Tri-Ace games. It's just how they handle it.
No, that's never a problem. It's how you utilize the opportunity to make abundance of characters.
I'm just saying that I think like Valkyrie Profile 2 and Radiata Stories work as well as they do because they are side content, and then they can make the side content as lengthy as they can, and background info as lengthy as they can without it like padding the story. Just because this is side content, not the main story. So if you do,
it would just kind of drag the main story down if they put
it in the main story, which is why Valkyrie Profile 2 and Radiata Stories got like a cast of lesser than. It's like the cast of Valkyrie Profile 2 is like 5 to 10 people maximum. And then like Radiata Stories even less than that. like 5 people who are the main characters at one time, really.
And
Which
that's
is-
the other thing I just
yeah.
thought about too. Even though it has a lot of characters, you're not sticking with those characters the whole way through the story. You're switching between so many of them for certain points that it doesn't feel like you're really sticking with the same core group all the time. But yeah, I see your point though. You make a good point. With the side content, that really is important when especially when you have a lot of characters like that. That you're not forcing yourself to have to like, oh god, I gotta go do this. It's
Like-
your choice to want to either recruit those people, like in Radiata Stories case, or to take that special opportunity to talk to the characters and all that stuff. That's why I think a lot of games like Fire Emblem, Three Houses does best with that, because it finds a way to adapt after school life when you're not in battle. Depending on your faction you pick in Three Houses, you can learn these characters over time. And the same thing with Persona. It's sort of similar. Those are the kind of games that does it better. And I think Trice did try to put a spin on it, but it just didn't work. I guess besides that, what about your guys' thoughts on the meat? I guess the meat and the potatoes of the whole thing, where we really feel the series went downhill. Like the whole as a company, when it comes to like, they feel like they're not really doing much these days.
You mean Star Ocean 5?
Star Ocean 5 I knew
Yeah,
it's going to come eventually.
If Triace was already dying up to the point of Star Ocean 5, Star Ocean 5 is a dagger that pierces its heart, is dying heart, I think. It's
like a permanent scar on the
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
There is something that I want to say very, very importantly. I guess a question I should ask. Peter,
Okay.
you did a video on Star Ocean 5, right?
No, I did. Like I've only seen Star Ocean 5, but from what I've heard, it's pretty bad.
It's terrible.
Well, I think we should we should mention this, I guess. If you really want a video that goes in certain detail, I guess certain aspects, there's a video that we're friends with this person on YouTube, but Shintai did a video talking about the things that really makes that game very disappointing to play. Like the things that he really went more kind of specifically in detail about. It's not a review. It's more like a
Analysis.
how would you put it?
Analysis.
Yeah, I would recommend watching that video. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head right now, but
Like
if you
even
look
though,
up
yeah,
channel,
Mhm.
you should definitely watch that video. It's really good. But that'll kind of give you an understanding where we're coming from when we talk about why this game is it's just so inherently bad.
but yeah, even
Like-
from a cursory view, I could tell that Star Ocean 5 basically killed all the momentum that Trice had, just with how much people were just talking about Star Ocean 5 and how bad it is. Like, let me ask this important question to you guys, okay? I said before stream, but I guess I should say it right now. Would you rather play Star Ocean 5 or Tales of Zestiria?
Zestiria.
I
No
had some
comment.
time to think about it because I didn't quite answer this question completely. Because I played the PS3 version of Zestiria and it's not great, but I mean, at the end of the day, I think after playing 5 and playing Zestiria for a time, I could see Star Ocean 5 becoming really, really boring and very terrible to play in the long term. Whereas Zestiria feels like it has identity. Star Ocean 5 does not have identity because it takes core aspects of its gameplay from Star Ocean 3 and 4. It didn't even make its own type of gameplay.
And the
make
characters
new-
all have the exact same movesets and normal attack animations as old Star Ocean characters. Like,
Oh,
what the fuck?
Someone made a side-by-side comparison video of like the gameplay mechanics in 3 and 4 and 5, and it's identical. Like, it's like they took the game engine and just ported it. It's
Literally exactly what they did. It's fucking...
it's
man.
laughable at best.
Hey,
It's
hey,
like
man. They'll say
it didn't have a budget.
if like
I don't know what it
that's-
is.
that's even worse than Xillia 2, because Xillia 2 expanded its combat systems.
Yeah, exactly.
But then you're saying like Star Ocean 3 4 just copy paste both of them into one game.
So
Yeah.
basically Star Ocean 5 is like an amalgamation of Star Ocean 3, and Infinite Undiscovery mixed together with a little bit of Star Ocean 4 sprinkled in here and there.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't like actually improve the combat?
No, it's streamlined, if anything.
Okay.
If you
Like,
look at how the game graphically looks, it reminds me of Infinite Undiscovery. It has like it looked like just the way the game looks, how far back the camera is.
Let me ask this. Let me ask this, okay? Does Star Ocean 5 have the uncanny valley of Star Ocean 4?
No, it doesn't. The character models look pretty good.
Okay.
They don't look like creepy, lifeless dolls.
Well, I thought Star Ocean 4's models weren't that bad.
Oh boy.
No, they look like dolls, and they look really weird and
Yep.
creepy.
I mean,
The eyes.
I guess the models in 5 don't look bad. It's just
we were talking about 4.
Oh, you saying the models in 4 look bad?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they look bad in 4. I'm saying I think the models in 5 don't look bad either. I never had an issue with the models in 4, but you guys are saying they look like dolls. But I do think they look better in 5. Okay. But I don't think 4's models look that bad.
We were just
I think 5's models look better.
Star Ocean 4 and Xenosaga 2, since we talked about that last week.
Oh, brother.
Have this most uncanny valleys in terms of character design. It's like it just feels so creepy and doll-like.
Okay, that
takes me out of it. It just takes me out of it.
No comparison when it comes to that. I mean, it's obvious that 2's models look really bad, I guess. But I guess we should say in this sense, is there any way of them coming back to greatness that they once had, which I guess wasn't really that great to begin with, but do you think...
To me, Tri-Ace was always solid. The only truly great games I said to me, again, was Radiata Stories and Valkyrie Profile 2. But I think most of the games was pretty solid.
Yeah, like they were always consistently at least like decent.
Yeah.
At the very least.
The problem is those games aren't memorable. You don't really see people going, "Oh man, Star Ocean, blah blah blah." You know,
Radiata Stories was memorable. Valkyrie Profile 2 was memorable.
It is, but let's face it. Do you really hear that many people?
That's mostly because most people didn't play Radiata Stories or Valkyrie Profile 2.
But that's what I'm saying. There's a core audience that's played them and like knows are good games. But when you look at the vast amount of other games, when you mention PS2, right? A lot of the times, even though Radiata Stories is mentioned, it's not in like the top 5. It's like, oh yeah, and there's Radiata Stories. That's a good game too. After you mention the ones that everybody mentions
like
all the time. Like what I'm saying is they have good games, but they're not like the games you go out very first when you think of like a genre or like you think like a console. It's not going to be the first thing comes to mind, right? Be honest. Even with yourself, you can think, okay, yeah, I would probably play these games. Radiata Stories is a good game. It wouldn't be like my first on the list to be like, I'm gonna jump and play that right now.
I don't know. Radiata Stories is in my top 5 of PS3 2 games.
Okay, for you that's probably the case, but I'm saying for most people though, it probably wouldn't be in the top 5. It'd probably be in the top 10. But I just think it's not like I hear everybody talking about Valkyrie Profile, and I think I hear more people want to know Valkyrie Profile.
Just because something's talked about doesn't mean like it's good, all that good. I think.
Yeah, like
people haven't played or even heard of Shadow Hearts or Shadow Hearts Covenant. Are you going to tell me that game doesn't deserve to be on the top 5 PS2 games?
Shadow Hearts deserves more games.
I'm not saying that Radiata Stories doesn't either. I'm saying, look, there are people who would put them in the top 5, but on a grander scale of gamers, it probably wouldn't be. It's just that game the game wasn't released in Europe first off, so it had an even less market of people to play it. You got to remember that game didn't come out everywhere, so that's the other issue. The game had a very limited release outside of Japan. Okay, so when you compare that game releasing to a mass market, it is going to be a game that does not get a lot of people to talk about it because it didn't come out everywhere. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that didn't help Tri-Ace back then. It doesn't help them now. When you have a game that didn't have a huge market. So Radiata Stories would have done better had it released in Europe. It didn't. So the game did not get the recognition it deserved, which is one of the reasons I feel the game may never get ported. Because it didn't have a lot of support then, and it probably didn't have a lot of support now because there's no market for it. Because whatever decision they made back then, they decided we're not going to release it in Europe, we're not going to release it in Australia, we're not going to release it in parts of Asia. So
yeah, Radiata Stories HD is a pipe dream. Just like how we're never going to. Just like how.
Remake, of course, it probably sell because that game was good back then, but it's just. I just don't know. I don't know how they could market a game like that now. There's probably gonna be a lot of things they got to change in it. It may be some things they might have mentioned or said in the game that has to be altered. It's just, I don't know.
Like Radiata Stories to me, at least the first half is like one of the most funniest RPG I've played.
Yeah, the humor is like great, and it's always and the writing is so sharp.
I used to just make the character walk around funny when he walks slow. He always had this little dance to him when he walks.
Yeah,
the walking.
He always have this like wiggle when he walks. I think that was really charming.
He walks slow. He even walks stupid in that game. I just like this game is making fun of itself.
Like to me, Radiata Stories' greatest strengths is its world building, and
the vibrance of the world. It feels so alive.
Okay, let me ask this question: do you think Trace had whoever was, I guess, in charge of the company? Did they have, I guess, creative freedom when they made that game? Because I feel like that game had creative freedom. Like I think they weren't bound by a certain this, that, and the other. I feel like Radiata Stories had like this open control of, hey, this is what you guys feel you want to do. Go for it.
Yeah, it does feel like its own thing.
Yeah, that's it. It's not bound by like a restriction.
But yeah, I think like
expectations.
Like getting all the characters in the game was really fun because each have their own side quests, each have them their own perks, and each of them like the level scaling in Radiata Stories was probably one of the best I've seen in RPG. Because you know how in most games when you get like this boss type character in your party, but then he's not as strong as he is when you fight against him. That's not the case in Radiata Stories because when you get the character that's this badass, he joins you as a badass.
Mm-hmm. Like they don't get nerfed for the sake of like balance.
In Radiata Stories, you can get Gerald pretty early. You probably can't beat Gerald without exploiting some stuff, like poison and just running around, which I did because I wanted Gerald as quickly as I want. Because he's badass. Like he's strong and he's like he's a twin sword user using like a long sword and like a short sword to parry. Like he's cool as all shit. But then when you get him, like, and then you see how strong he's as strong as he is when you fought him. It's like it just makes the world feel a lot more alive and real to you. And like Radiata Stories has so much charm to it through the humor, through the characters, seeing the characters do their own activities that make the world building to make the world feel more alive. Because each character got like their own schedule they have to do. But yeah, I just really like Radiata Stories. World building and the NPCs and just the vibrancy of the world and how charming it is like Radiata Stories' strongest feature. Even though the combat system is probably pretty meh in that game.
It's a solid combat system. I think the coolest part about the combat is I like that Jack like multiple weapons and they all feel totally different.
I like the game.
I like how you can form your own combos.
Yeah, you learn more attacks as you use the weapon, and then you can literally like form your own attack and like combo. It's pretty cool.
And then there's the link system, which I think was pretty cool.
It was neat. I didn't like felt like I had to go out of my way to use them, but they added some spice to the combat, and they had their uses.
It's an overall able to make, when it comes to that, they're able to shine, and I think that game where their greatest strengths were at one point.
I would say that not every character is balanced in a way that you can use every character you want, because there are characters are weak as shit, and the characters you want to use. But I do like how some characters are stronger than other. It makes the world again feel more real, I think. Well, yeah.
I mean, but again, that's kind of what I wish Trice would go back to if they're going to come back into the console market. Because right now, I don't think they are. I think they're in this mobile phase. Because I had read somewhere that they've kind of shifted their focus towards mobile games after Exist Archive. So to me, I think if they were to re-explore the idea of going back to the market for console gaming, I wish they bring back Radiata Stories. Either remaking the game, not changing how the game plays, just making it look modern, but plays like it did. Maybe adding some new stuff in it, comedic, new characters. You know what I mean? Just make the game feel modern, but don't stray away from the style of the first Radiata Stories if they remake it or whatnot. I don't think Valkyrie Profile is ever going to come back. I think Square Enix owns the rights to that game or something. I have no idea, but I just know that I wished in some way it does come back. You know.
Hey, you know what's the best item in Radiata Stories?
What?
There's this item that scans your opponent's stats.
Oh, the analyze balls or whatever the fuck they're called.
Yeah, you know, and then there's a description where it says this company made to analyze stuff, but then they had to take off the weight parameters just because too many ladies was complaining about that.
I didn't hear about that.
It's in the description.
Oh Jesus!
Radiata Stories, if nothing else, is an incredibly charming game.
And then, I think another cool thing too is I like the branching story in the second half of the game, where it's like a completely different. You have to make a certain choice, and then that dictates what direction the story goes in. Yeah, which adds to really good replay value.
Yeah, and then it either gets you to join non-humans or humans, and then if you choose non-humans, every human character that you've made friends with is against you now.
And you fight them in random encounters too. You'll just find them walking around. So the characters that you befriended become literal enemies that try to kill you.
And if you side with humans, every non-human friend is made against you. Though I think going non-human and then fighting against your human characters, human friends, is much more effective. Just because most of the non-humans you recruit in the game is only available after that part. There are some you can still recruit, but most of them, non-humans, is the recruitable characters, is after that decision.
Right, yeah, so it doesn't have that same powerful punch to it.
You remember a lot about this game. Have you played it recently?
No.
Because I'll be honest, the last time I played this game was a long time ago. 2007 or 8 when I played.
You know what's the best side quest in the game? When you have to fight a giant robot that's threatening Theater Vancour.
I don't know if I remember that.
Yeah. You remember that during Jack's selection, there are these people doing the knight selection too, and they're just this pompous noble.
Oh yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
I forgot.
In order to recruit him, you have to do this side quest, which get him to get this armor that transforms him to a robot. And then you fight him as he tries to take over Theater Vancour in his robot form. and then when you recruit him, you get the robot armor, and then when you put it on, Jack becomes a robot.
I love that so much.
Oh my God. Oh yeah, there's also a Star Ocean 3 costume in the Radiata Stories too.
Oh yeah, you can dress up Jack as Fate Line God.
Yeah.
This is the reason why people like Radiata Stories, or in this case, why Peter remembers the game so much.
I mean, there's many memorable stuff about Radiata Stories.
It does, don't
get me wrong, it's a good game, but I'm be honest, man. After 10 years of not playing it, I'm not gonna remember everything about that game.
As you know, as humorous as it is, though, it does get way more serious in the second half, which could be good or bad depending on who you ask.
Well, yeah, it's comedic and it's serious. The way it's balanced out well, that you end up not feeling like, oh god, it's not taking itself seriously at all. And in
Then
some
it gets
way,
it gets a lot darker.
I
in
like
the second.
like
it,
I don't
it,
say
it
I
doesn't
won't.
omit humor.
I wouldn't say that the humor ever gets to the point that it's making fun of itself. It's just these humorous moments that happen.
It's just humorous moments. Yeah, it's not like
Yeah.
a parody. It's like you said, it's not like a parody of itself or like breaking the fourth wall all the time. It's just like a lighthearted.
It's like
story
playing
for the
off,
most part in
like,
the first
most of the
half with
humor-
funny characters.
Most of the humor comes off from playing off of these characters' personalities rather than
Right,
making
right.
fun of the tropes. Like the first scene you have with Jack and
Ridley.
Ridley is like with and Gans. With Gans asking Jack to pinch him because he thinks it's a dream,
And
then
then Jack pitches him
pinches
harder and harder because Ridley pisses him off so much.
because Ridley beats him in the next selection, and Jack only got in because of his father's name. And then why he's pinching him is like, I'm gonna beat you, just you wait. And then he pinches Gans harder and harder. Oh my god! Like
I think a scene that really made me laugh was when they were negotiating with the goblins.
egg.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Egg.
And I like how like the Orshian or church member that we got was like, why did you just say eggplant?
Yeah. He's like the dumb guy, and then he's the one that ends up having like the most logical.
Like there's so many memorable characters in this game, like side characters too.
Yeah, like I said, even the characters that you just recruit on the street end up having at least like a glimmer of personality.
Oh yeah, I remember how like in order to recruit the underworld boss, like you have to get all you have to recruit every other guild leader.
So like the Mage Guild and Thieves Guild or whatever.
Yeah, and then you talk to him, and then he'll fight you just to see how strong you are.
Okay.
Like, there's so many interesting stories with each recruitment of each side character. Like, it's not as simple, oh, get me, kill 5 rats and I'll join you.
Right, yeah.
There's always some sort of story, simple story, but story to it, that still make each character feel memorable. And that's why Radiata Stories it's such a good game to me. To me, Radiata Stories just have this very vibrant and interesting world to explore and traverse and to interact with. That it's such a really fun experience.
Yeah, it's just a really fun game, and it's really charming, and it's despite the relatively mediocre combat system, it's still a fun game to play too. Just exploring the world is a joy. So yeah, I definitely think it's one of Triace's best, and it's a shame that it gets like kind of slept on. Like no one really talks about it. It's a gem.
Radiata Stories is Triace's one of its best games, I think. At least it has one of the most interesting worlds and characters in a Triace title, I think.
And it has like a really clear identity of its own, and no other Triace game is like it at all.
Yeah, and I like how you feel like a part of the world in Radiata Stories, just because everybody else is doing their own thing, their own schedule, and then you have to go out of your way to recruit them. And it's not like they're just waiting for you to recruit them.
Yeah, they're not just standing there like with a little exclamation point over their head, said, "Okay, do this quest for me, and then I'll join you." Like, you gotta follow them around, learn their schedule, and learn their quirks.
I will say that like recruiting every character can make Radiata Stories sort of like a guide game, kind of. But sometimes. That part is still just so interesting to me, and the stories are really interesting with some of the more colorful characters that it's worth it, I think. Any other games? Talk about Triace?
I don't think there is any other ones, is it? Because I think we covered all the ones I've played.
Yeah, me too. So Star Ocean, Infinite Undiscovery, this, Resonance of Fate, like, we covered. At least all the ones, like Forest, like same thing, like the ones that I played, at least we covered.
We'll talk about Valkyrie Profile too for a bit, right?
A little.
Yeah.
Not much. I also think that's one of their best games too.
Like I think Valkyrie Profile 2 has Triace's best combat system.
Mm-hmm.
Like Valkyrie Profile 2 was just beautiful on the PS2 when it first came out. And like even when you came to the PS3, Valkyrie
Profile 2 looks better than a lot of PS3 games.
Yeah.
It really does.
It's just for me, I haven't played that game in so long. I don't remember as much about it. I just remember it being really good.
I remember really liking the combat system of Valkyrie Profile 2, especially when you break up body parts. And then
that was neat.
Yeah, and then building up your gauge to use everybody's special attack. Which was like the special attacks you see in Valkyrie Profile 2 was absolutely nuts and over the top, and just so cool to perform.
Yeah, they're basically the mystic arts of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the story was pretty interesting.
I do like the dungeons in Valkyrie Profile 2, just mostly because
it's like
of
a 2D platformer.
Yeah, not only that, I do like the tree system, the tree orb system they have, and that
right.
Through exploring, you find these neat orbs you can get, and then you can use these orbs to either get some benefit in battle, like getting the EXP orb so that one of your party members get EXP, and stuff like that. I think it's really cool, and it rewards exploration of your dungeons, and it really does make exploring to feel worth it in this 2D, 2.5D perspective, just to find some new orbs you can use against the enemy. I thought that aspect was pretty cool, and it did use like the teleporting thing pretty cool in the dungeons too, or some neat platforming.
I wasn't too fond of like the weapon grid system though. I think like where we have to match the icons with each other and that generates like skills. I didn't really. There was too much micromanaging, and it was just really hard to get all the gems that you needed to align correctly. I just found it more of a hassle.
But yeah, I never really minded it, I think, but I was a kid when I played it, so it's probably just whatever to me. And let's see. Wait, Trios helped develop Final Fantasy 13 too?
Did they?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Trios helped out with Final Fantasy 13 too.
Interesting.
That's what I just see from Wikipedia.
Oh, okay. Huh. I heard they also had some sort of involvement in the development of Radiant Historia on the DS.
I never played Radiant Historia.
Okay. I don't know how much involvement, but I did hear that they were there in some regard.
Yeah, I think that's every one of Tri's games we played. We never played any of the mobile games.
No, never. I'm never going to.
Like I played Fate Grand Order and playing Tales of Crestoria, but I've never had the inkling to play one of Tri's mobile games. I think that's all for Tri's really. But like Tri's is like.
They have a solid resume.
Yeah, they have a solid resume. It's just that they're run into a rough patch, I think, right now.
I hope we see them come back at some point.
Yeah.
Kind of a shame because they do good stuff.
I hope that. But see, I want them to come back, but the problem is, I think they've kind of chosen to go down the mobile phone route because they've released a lot more on mobile phone than they have on console recently. So part of me thinks if they do, it'd probably be helping a developer, or if say a company requests one of their IPs to be made on console.
Oh, so, you know what I thought? You know what I thought was a Trius game, but it's not. Eternal Sonata, but it's made by Tri Crescendo, not Tri-Ace.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's not made by Trice.
Crescendo.
You can definitely get that name confused.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I think overall. I mean, I think Trice did have some one-off ideas in the Final Discovery being a game that tried to have an identity but just didn't do a good job executing it, and two really good games on PS2 that show where highlights were. And I kind of
Yeah.
wish they pursued that quality more into the PS3 generation, because unfortunately, the PS3 generation was lacking and started going downhill in quality. And the PS4 game of Star Ocean 5, yeah, it's not good.
It's probably the inverse. Like Tri-East to me is like the inverse of Namco Bandai in terms of Tales series. Just like every Tales game, I think is at least consistent in quality, or I like it better than the last one. Why Tri-East, I think they peaked in the PS2 era with Radiata Stories and Valkyrie Profile 2, and they never really managed to capture the magic they had with Radiata Stories, Valkyrie Profile 2.
Yeah, like even with games like Resonance of Fate and Star Ocean 4,
Yeah.
they're just decent.
Yeah. Which is a shame, because I do think Tri-Ace is a very good, like, they have good developers in there, I think. So,
Yeah, they're definitely competent.
Yeah. I think that's all to talk about Tri-Ace today, really? Oh, wait.
I think so.
Wait. You know what's the one common thing found in most Tri-Ace games?
What's that?
The final dungeons. The extra dungeons. And
like post game dungeons or whatever.
yeah, the post game dungeons where you go through the Seraphim Gate and then fight this gauntlet of bosses, and then you fight Ethereal Queen at the end.
Yeah, that's their shtick when it comes to post game content, which I like. Really cool. Kind of like makes them tie all together.
Yeah. Like the only post game dungeons I've done in a Tri-Ace game is Radiata Stories. Where like you can get Lenneth in Radiata Stories if you do the post game dungeon, and she's like so overpowered. She's so much stronger than most of the other characters in the game. Like she's the only one whose HP values goes up to 9,999. Why most of the characters, like, I don't know, like it doesn't reach that high.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's really neat how most Tri-Ace games have this post-game dungeons that have a common theme around it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it makes them all feel like kind of connected in some sort of way, like at least loosely.
Yeah.
Which is neat.
I think that's all for today, really.
Yeah, not a lengthy one this time, but we'll be back for sure with something more detailed and in depth. I think we just have to figure out what that next episode will be. But I'm pretty sure it'll be something. Honestly, I guess Peter, we really should maybe consider Judgment then. I guess I should just go ahead and say it then. That's more than likely probably what I'm going to do.
Okay.
Vacation this week. I just put more time into that.
Well, that's all for today's episode of Sirus Gaming Corner. This is Peter 47890 Cyrus signing off. Later, folks.
Take care, everyone.
Later.